Episode 1, Family Roots. Hi everyone. My name is Chiwoniso Mapako. If life has taught me one thing, it's that to begin life on Earth is to begin a unique journey and that everyone has a story to tell. My story represents courage and bravery against all odds and shows that God is still in the business of divine intervention. It is an amazing account of how God showed up at my point of need and helped me to overcome spiritual adversity that seemed insurmountable and threatened to take me to an early grave. I begin my story with a background that describes my family origins, my family structure, and my early childhood years. Then from episode 2 and forward, I get into the gist of my story. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 1. I love and cherish Hond Valley, which is home to both my paternal and maternal families. Hond Valley is located in Manicaland province, in the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe, which is a range of 3 towering mountains, namely Kimanimani, Nyanga, and Vumba Mountains, that extend from the eastern border of Zimbabwe into Mozambique and form a natural border between the two countries. Hond Valley is a land of captivating natural beauty. The lush green landscape is endowed with natural water springs that never run dry, of clean water year-round, crystal clear streams, fast-flowing rivers meandering through the forest, winding and curved roads, high and steep and deep cliffs and gorges, huge and natural pine tree forests, fertile soil that grows banana, avocado, mango, peach, and apple plantations, as well as tea plantations. 2 spectacular and majestic waterfalls, named Mupotedzi and Muchururu Falls, overlook the sprawling valley and fall with thunderous roars into the deep valley. Mupotedzi Falls is the highest in Zimbabwe, 2nd highest in Africa, and 17th highest in the world. Both my paternal and maternal extended families stem from the Manika ethnic group, and the totem that identifies my paternal family is Simboti Nua, which is depicted by a leopard. The Manika people are one of the 5 ethnic groups in Zimbabwe, who are collectively known as the Shona people. They are warm, friendly, and deeply spiritual people, be they staunch believers in God or staunch believers in African traditional religion. Today the Manika people are colloquially known by Zimbabweans as Wasu. It is said that Wasu means a bosom friend, like the Zezuru word Sawira. I have nostalgic memories of swimming, bathing, and washing laundry in Hond River, herding cattle, collecting firewood, fetching water, and walking several kilometers to and from school. I was born in the year 1975 and grew up in the village of Mupotedzi in the region of Mutasa district. It was following my mother's death that my maternal grandparents took legal guardianship of me as an infant of 6 months. The love and affection I have for my grandparents can't be described in words. In a Shona household, a father is an important figure, but I did not know my father, who was absent from my life right from my birth. I grew up accepting my parentless fate, but I was deeply troubled by it. During my formative years, until I was age 10, my grandparents nurtured and raised me. They stood in the gap on behalf of my parents because they knew that the absence of my biological parents gnawed my heart, and as best they could, they gave me unconditional love, physical and emotional support, guidance, and life lessons. My grandmother had told me that children who grew up without biological parents were more likely to suffer from academic, behavioral, and psychological problems, and she and my grandfather were determined to save me from experiencing these problems. However, despite my special bond with them, I felt sad that unlike other children in the village, who lived with their biological parents, both my parents were unavailable. It puzzled me why my grandparents never spoke about my deceased mother. Whenever I asked them about her, they would shrug their shoulders or change the subject. I could not help but think that there were skeletons in the closet that they hid from me. Sometimes, my relatives spoke about my deceased mother in hushed tones, and information that I managed to glean from their gossip was that my mother had lived a troubled life and had committed suicide. Their cautious conversations would halt when they noticed that I was within earshot. My father's extended family lived close to my grandparents' homestead, but they did not have any regard for me, and I experienced feelings of rejection and abandonment. Although shown a traditional custom dictates that a child inherits his or her surname from their father, my father was not available to get me a birth certificate, and my grandparents had no choice but to file my birth certificate, which was recorded with my grandfather's surname. My grandparents had revealed to me that he'd migrated to South Africa when my mother was pregnant and that he'd never returned to Mupotedzi village ever since. I always wondered whether my father would ever come back or if I would ever meet him. Some family members thought that I bore a resemblance to my father and that had I been born a boy, I would have been his photocopy. But other relatives argued that I was a mirror image of my mother, hence my name Chiwoniso, which in Shona means mirror image. My grandmother equipped me with essential housekeeping skills that she said would allow me to be an industrious wife and mother in the future. Every morning I would wake up at 5 o'clock to do my everyday chores. Firstly, I would wash dishes from the previous night's meal and then I would sweep around the yard. After that, I would fetch water that would be used that day. Then, I would start a fire and cook porridge and make tea. I would then take a bath and eat the cooked porridge and then drink tea with sweet potatoes, pumpkin, or whatever vegetable was in season. After eating breakfast, I would change into my school uniform and would leave for school around 7 o'clock. During the week, my grandparents also awakened at 5 o'clock, and after eating porridge, they would head to the fields to cultivate and till the land. At 10 o'clock, after 4 hours of working, they would take a break and drink an energy drink called Mahu. After their break, they would work for another 2 hours until 12 noon and then return home, exhausted and hungry. This was their weekly routine. When I returned home from school in the afternoon, I would water the vegetable garden which was at the back of the homestead, after which I would go to the pasture and take over herding cattle from the person who'd looked after my grandparents' cattle from morning. My favorite cow was named Buttercup, a name that I derived from a butter brand. At sundown, I would drive the cattle back to the homestead and lock them up in their kraal for the night, then help my grandmother to prepare the evening meal. Despite my grandmother's stern stance that I had to master household chores, she understood that all work and no play would make me a dull girl. So, during the weekend, I had plenty of time to play a myriad of games with my friends. End of episode 1.